listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. I'm a relationship coach, and I help people who are engaging in infidelity to deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do. No shame, no blame, no judgments. I understand that life can be complicated at times, and I believe that we all deserve guidance that respects the fullness of our humanity and the complexity of our situations. And that's exactly what I offer. So if you would like my help sorting out your infidelity situation, let's work together. You can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. All right. Today, we are going to talk more about breakups, and we will focus on planning the conversation or how you will tell your person that you want to end your relationship, leave your relationship. We'll talk about the specific things you might cover in the conversation and how and when you might deliver this news or schedule the conversation. And this guidance will be applicable to any breakup, no matter who you're breaking up with or what kind of relationship you have with the person you're breaking up with. This will be totally relevant to you, even if you don't have any kind of infidelity factor in your love life right now. But before we get into the details, I want to emphasize that breaking up can be a really terrifying experience for the person who's initiating the breakup. Yes, being broken up with can be quite an experience too, of course. But while there are a lot of resources out there for surviving a breakup, if you're the person who is being broken up with or has been on the receiving end of someone else's decision about your relationship, there are not, in my opinion, enough good resources out there for the person who's deciding to end the relationship or initiating the breakup. So if you are contemplating ending a relationship and therefore probably contemplating how you're going to go about breaking up with someone, I have some suggestions for you. In last week's episode, I talked about the things you may want to consider before you even begin to think about how you're going to execute your breakup, or how you're going to deliver the news to your person that you don't want to be in a relationship with them anymore. And if you remember from last time, one of the most important things I encourage you to do is get really clear on whether you want to leave your relationship or not. It sounds like a simple step, but it is critically important. And often people skip it. Often people skip that step. So if you haven't made that clear decision yet, then doing that is your work. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Just focus on the question of whether you want to stay or go. And of course, if you haven't yet listened to last week's episode, go back and do so. This little nugget of guidance will make more sense. Now, once you've made the decision, once you've decided that you want to leave your relationship, then it's time to get ready to figure out what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. And just like taking some time to get your thoughts about ending the relationship in order and making a decision before you try to plan the conversation is an investment in the quality of your breakup. Taking some time to figure out what you want to convey when you have the conversation is also an important investment in the quality of your breakup experience. And I'm going to keep saying the conversation today. And what I mean by that is the conversation in which you tell your person, your beloved, that you don't want to be with them anymore or you want to end the relationship. And depending on your situation, the conversation may be the only conversation. It may be the singular conversation, or it may be the conversation that kicks off a series of additional conversations. Sometimes it's possible to bring a relationship to a definite conclusion with one conversation. And sometimes it takes more than one conversation, maybe many more conversations, maybe a year's worth of conversations, right? But even if that's the case for you, the first conversation in which you tell your person in no uncertain terms that you want to leave the relationship you've been in with them may be a pretty big deal. And this does not have to be a bad thing. And I'll say more about that in a moment. But the point is, this is something that it may be worth planning thoughtfully. Now, in regards to my point about breaking up not having to be a bad thing, I want you to decide on purpose what you are going to intentionally believe about why you breaking up with your person is a good thing, so to speak, or an okay thing, or the best possible thing. Doing this might sound crazy if you believe that breakups are sad or bad, or at least very sad and very bad in some ways for at least one of the parties involved. But even if those things are true, and I'm not saying they necessarily are, is there anything that could be positive about your breakup? There has to be something good in it for you, or else you wouldn't be doing it. Maybe the good for you is that you'll have the freedom to do things that aren't possible within the container of your relationship. Maybe the good thing for you is you'll be able to live a fuller expression of the person, live out a life that is a fuller expression of the person you know yourself to be at this point in time, right? And maybe for your partner, the benefit is that you're being honest with them about your desire to leave the relationship. And that might not seem like a good thing, but isn't it better than not telling them that you don't want to be with them anymore? Now, this bit of pre-work might sound redundant to some of the things I talked about last time, and it is similar, but it's a little different. Even if you have made a clear decision that you want to leave a relationship, you may be very apprehensive about conveying this to your partner. So many people tell me that they just wish their partner would break up with them so that they wouldn't have to be the bad guy, so to speak. And I assure you that people of all genders use the language of bad guy, right? We've collectively internalized the idea that breaking up with someone is a bad thing to do. And we don't want to be the person who does something bad, especially to someone we care about. So I really want you to question the idea that breaking up with someone is by definition bad, and consider that breaking up with someone might be the best thing you can possibly do if you don't want to be with them anymore. All right. So with that accomplished, you can then start to decide what you want to say. And I recommend considering covering the following points when you have the conversation. And if you're going to use this podcast episode as a guide, as a framework for developing your ideas about what you're going to say in your conversation, I recommend taking notes in response to each of the points I'm going to raise, and then refining your sense of what you want to say after you've put together the initial set of notes. Point number one, what exactly have you decided about your participation in your relationship? Assuming you're planning a breakup conversation, the point may be that as far as you're concerned, the relationship is over. And if that's what you want, I encourage you to convey that explicitly. Now, some people want to suggest a separation before they officially end a relationship. And the question of whether to take a break or have a separation before you end a relationship is one that I'm not going to devote a lot of time to here. And it's one that I didn't talk about in the last episode. But I will say that if you want a break or a separation and you really like your reasons for wanting that, by all means, tell your partner you want a break or you want a separation. But tell them that explicitly, right? But some people tell their partner they want a break because they don't want to tell them that they want to end the relationship, because that seems too uncomfortable, and telling them that they want a separation or a break seems a little bit easier. That's something that I want you to be be on the lookout for, right? And, sometimes taking a break is just another way of staying in limbo or maintaining the status quo for a little while longer. And doing that may not actually help anyone very much. If you know you want to end the relationship, you know you want to end the relationship, the end, right? So the point here is to get clear on what your essential message is. What does your partner need to know about your involvement in the relationship as of the moment you're having the conversation. Now, sometimes when I'm working with people who are preparing to have the conversation and we're walking through this step, they'll say things like, well, I can't just say I'm leaving someone, or, well, I can't just say I'm ending this. And my response is usually something like, why not? Right? Why can't you just say those things? I'm of the opinion that the most loving thing you can do for someone you care about and don't want to be romantically partnered with anymore is to tell them this as clearly as you can. Now, I will say that this is culturally specific advice. This would not necessarily be considered kind or loving in some contexts. But speaking from the American Western context in 2022, I recommend you tell them what you want the future of your relationship to look like in no uncertain terms, right? Generally speaking, we collectively don't benefit from hearing half truths or being kept guessing, right? Again, this is culturally specific advice. It's possible that in your context, the truth is better told indirectly. And you can be confident that if you tell your truth indirectly, your person will get the message you're trying to convey. But that's totally different from being opaque when you're operating within a context in which people expect to hear things clearly. Think about it this way. If you fired someone, would you tell them that, they're really great, but you just need to take a little break for a while and maybe, we could see how things go later and maybe down the road, we could like come back together and like collaborate again? Probably not, right? You would tell them that you appreciate everything they've done in their role, but it's just not working out. And that as of whatever day, their relationship with you as an employee is going to be over. You're going to give them their last paycheck so that they can then get on the business of finding a new job, right? Now, if you're listening and wringing your hands and saying, well, relationships aren't like jobs, that's fair, but it's still a useful point of reference. Sometimes the only way to convey a message is explicitly and directly. But being direct doesn't mean you have to be unkind. And that takes us to point number 2. I recommend that you give your person some insight into the reasons behind your decision. In other words, I recommend you tell them why you have chosen to end the relationship. And there are some caveats to this. If you are in a situation where you just need to get the heck away from someone, you may not need to give them any insight into your decision, right? But assuming that you don't have any safety concerns, and this is about bringing something that you value to a conclusion, you may want to, give your partner some insight into why you've chosen to walk away from them. How much you will say will depend on the nature of your relationship. Maybe you haven't been together for very long, or maybe you have been together for a long time, but you've already had many conversations about the relationship being on shaky ground, and your person has already heard everything that you aren't happy with in the relationship many times before. And you may not need to reiterate all those things. But no matter how much you say, it can be really important to give your person some honest information about why you've made the definite choice that you've made. As you're ending a relationship, you have one foot out the door, but you also have one foot still in it. And assuming your person wants to hear why you've made the choice you have, I think that giving them some reasons is an appropriate way to honor what you've shared with them, what they've meant to you, even as you are also telling them that you're transitioning into a totally new way of relating to them. Now, some people freak out when I make this suggestion because the reason why they're breaking up with someone is because they want to be with someone else, or they've been involved with someone else and they want to pursue that relationship, right? Or maybe they don't like their person at all, right? And they don't want to be honest about these things. Here's the thing. You don't have to disclose any particular piece of information. You don't have to do anything after all. And more to the point of, do I have to tell my partner that I've been involved with someone else, or that I'm likely going to be, pursuing a relationship with someone that I've already been seeing? I don't know that you have to give them that. And I don't know that it's even the most important thing that you might share with them, right? The essential points that are relevant to your person is that you don't want to be in a relationship anymore and why you don't want to be in the relationship with them anymore. The most important thing to them is that the relationship they have with you is predicated upon both of you wanting to be in it, or at least agreeing to be in it. And now you've changed your mind about that. So that's the essential thing that you need to convey. Doesn't mean you have to tell them, about your affair partner or whatever else it is that you're afraid of. But you do need to deliver the basic fact, which is I'm not going to do this anymore. Okay. Now, people also ask me how much detail they should get into about why they want to leave their relationship. And my answer is always, it depends. It depends on a lot of things. But in general, I believe in giving your partner an answer that is reasonably comprehensive and direct without being cruel. So telling your person that you've changed and you're no longer interested in being romantic partners with them is different from telling your partner that you just aren't attracted to them anymore, or they aren't interesting to you anymore. Telling your person that you really want to be single so that you can focus on what's most important to you as an individual right now is different from you telling your person that you think they're emotionally unstable and that they're ruining your life with all their drama. Telling your affair partner that, being with them has made you realize how great your spouse really is may not be necessary, right? Getting into any kind of critical detail, there's no need for that, right? But you may need to speak clearly about your own preferences and give them some insight into those. Now, this is different from justifying your decision. You don't have to do that. It's not your job to convince your person that it's okay for you to break up with them, right? They may try to tell you that your choice doesn't make sense, but that doesn't mean you have to convince them otherwise. Your job is to deliver your message and speak your truth without shame or blame, and then take the actions that will follow through on your message. And point number 3, you may also, in addition to sharing the reasons why you want to end the relationship, share the things that you have appreciated about your relationship or about your person when you have the breakup conversation. What can you genuinely thank your person for? Chances are good that you've appreciated a lot of things about them and the time you've shared with them, no matter how much time you've shared with them, and no matter how many things you aren't enjoying about your time with them currently. You've probably learned things from your person. You've probably become a different person as the result of your engagement with them. You've probably found some things wonderful and attractive and intriguing about them. And acknowledging these things can really help you honor what you've shared. And talking about this stuff can help you feel better, and hearing this stuff may help your person feel better too. We can't be sure of that, but it's certainly a possibility. And contributing to good feelings is a wonderful thing to do, even if there is also some pain and discomfort involved in having this kind of a discussion. Point number 4. You need to figure out what you're going to do after you have the conversation, and you need to be ready to follow through on that plan. And you need to be ready to convey to your person what you're going to do, right? So if you live with someone and you decide that you're going to move out after you have the conversation, you need to be able to tell your person that. You need to get those words out of your mouth. I'm moving out on Monday or whenever. And then you need to actually be able to do that. If you're going to move to another bedroom, you need to be able to say that, and then you need to do it. If your situation is such that you don't want to see the person you're breaking up with again, or for a certain, excuse me, or for a certain period of time, you'll need to say so. You'll need to say, okay, we're not going to have any contact anymore. This is what this is going to look like. This is what no contact means. And then you'll need to take the action to make that happen, to ensure that you don't see them, right? If you're asking someone else to move out, you need to figure out what kind of a time frame you're going to give them. And then you actually have to tell them, hey, I want you to move out. This is what I would like for you to leave by. If you're going to offer them any help, you need to tell them what that's going to be, right? If you're telling someone you just want to be friends, right? You're going to continue to have some kind of a relationship with them, but it's not going to be the same as the way your relationship has been. You have to decide what boundaries you're going to set in terms of how you interact. You have to communicate those boundaries to your person. And then you have to be ready to follow your own guidelines, right? So all breakups are different, and there's no rule book for what you should do following yours. But you need to figure out what your plan is, and then you need to communicate that to your partner, right? Point number 5, responding to your person's questions. There's no way to know exactly what your person will say when you initiate the conversation and deliver your news to them. And I do not advise you to spend too much time trying to anticipate what they will say. That is a recipe for doing a whole lot of nothing. But you may want to be prepared for them to ask questions, and you may want to think about how you will answer those questions. For instance, they might ask you to reconsider. And if they do, what will you say? They might ask you to go to couples counseling. And if they do, what will you say? If they say, don't you want to work on the relationship just one more time and give this one more chance? What will you say? If they ask you questions that you don't want to answer, what will you say? So here's a common example that I see with clients. Sometimes, there's an affair situation happening. And when the person who's having the affair breaks up with their spouse or their primary partner, the spouse might say, well, is this about so-and-so? They might have an inkling of what's going on, or they might say, is there someone else? And you get to decide how you answer that question. The whole, oh my God, the whole matter of is lying good, is lying bad, is telling the truth good, is telling the truth bad is a whole nother conversation. But for now, let me just say that I don't think that looking at those questions or approaching those questions from a moralistic, dualistic framework is helpful at all. So think about what's right for you if your person asks you questions that you don't want to answer. Point number 6, putting this all together. After you have gotten clear on these, on what you will want to convey in regards to these points I've offered here, you'll want to take some time to figure out the language you're going to use when you have the conversation. And you might want to draft out really specific sentences. You might want to be really clear about the particular words you will use, right? And you don't have to. You might just put down general points that you want to convey. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. There's no perfect way to do this. And this doesn't need to be complicated or difficult. Rather, the point is that you feel reasonably comfortable entering the conversation and you have a clear sense of what you're going to communicate, right? So this could mean that you come up with a written outline. This could mean that you practice speaking the words you plan to say out loud. It could mean that you practice having this conversation with someone, maybe someone like me. Maybe you talk to your pet or to your pet rock, whatever it is that works for you, right? The point is to be comfortable enough to do this reasonably effectively, okay? And there's a balance to be struck between taking the time to come up with a plan for what you're going to say and attempting to craft the perfect breakup speech or prepare yourself completely for the conversation. There's no way to do those latter two things. There's no such thing as perfect. There's no such thing as completely ready. Get yourself reasonably ready, and then get ready to do your best and accept that it won't be perfect. Then, once you have an outline of what you're going to cover, once you've practiced the language you're going to use, if that's helpful for you, once you have your good enough preparation accomplished, it's time to decide how and when you are going to deliver your news. And of course, a lot of people get really stuck when trying to figure out when to have the conversation. And I think this is at least partially well-intentioned, usually. But here's the thing. There is no perfect time for a breakup. Period, full stop. And the sooner you embrace that idea, the better off you'll be, because then you can get on with the business of figuring out a good enough time for your breakup. Now, on the other hand, some people do not get stuck on trying to figure out the best time for a breakup. Rather, as soon as they decide that they're going to break up with someone, they want to tell their person right away, and they may blurt out their news at the earliest possible opportunity. So if you have any inclination to do that, you're not alone. And I don't advise doing that either. Whether you're trying to find the elusive perfect time for a breakup, or whether you're on the verge of interrupting your person's important work event to tell them you want a divorce or that you want to break up with them, either way, your opportunity is to practice tolerating discomfort. It may be the discomfort that comes from imagining sharing your news, or it may be the discomfort that comes from holding back on sharing your news. But either way, your job is to tolerate your feelings so that you don't end up making a decision about timing that is based exclusively on trying to avoid or rid yourself of your own discomfort. Okay? As for actually picking a time goes, here's what I want you to consider. If you are in the midst of a major life crisis, or if your person is in the midst of a major life crisis, it might make sense to delay having the conversation until you're out of the woods or they're out of the woods. But when I say major life crisis, I really mean major life crisis. Your person being stressed about their job may not count as a major life crisis. Having a family vacation plan for 2 months from now is not a major life crisis. Family plans and job-related stress are a part of life, right? If you wait for a time when your calendar is completely clear, you may never find it. If you wait for a time in which everything in your life and your person's life is going really, really well, you may wait forever. So, assuming that you are not in the midst of a major life crisis, I want you to ask yourself this. What is the best time you could find within the next 2 weeks to have the conversation? Now, when I say best time, here's what I mean. I mean that you and your person are able to talk without interruption for about an hour. Yeah, you might want to have longer than an hour. I get it. But if you have a hard time coming up with more than an hour, don't let that be an excuse for putting the conversation off. You can get what you need to say across in an hour. And you can always schedule a follow-up conversation later. But when I tell people this, they sometimes protest. They tell me all kinds of reasons why they can't possibly have the conversation in the next 2 weeks. And here's the thing. You can delay having the conversation for as long as you want. If the next 2 weeks are truly bad, then by all means, do it in the next 3 weeks. The question you want to ask yourself is, after those 2 weeks pass or after those 3 weeks pass, are the next 2 weeks going to look equally impossible? And what about the 2 weeks after that? Right? If you're having a really hard time deciding when it would be good to talk, you can always tell your person, hey, I'd really like to find a time for us to talk about some important stuff. When can we find an hour when we both won't be interrupted or distracted? Enlist them in the project of helping you find a time, right? Now, what if you can't have the conversation in person? What if you and your person can't schedule time together physically in the same place anytime soon? Guess what? The same things apply. You can still choose the best possible way for the two of you to communicate and the best possible time to talk to them. It's really easy to make finding a time for your conversation really difficult, but it doesn't have to be. Okay. The last big point I'll make today is that you want to be ready for the post-conversation phase of your relationship. You may have had a lot of feelings before having the conversation and during the conversation, and you may have even more feelings after you have the conversation. You might feel relieved or free or even elated, but you might also feel sad or extremely sad or uncertain or newly vulnerable. You may feel strange. You may feel discombobulated. You may feel unmoored, right? But if you anticipate that these feelings are likely to come up and know that this is a normal part of making change and leaving a set of circumstances that you've cherished for a while, or at least have grown accustomed to, have a different experience than you'll have if you aren't prepared for these kinds of feelings. And if you believe these kinds of feelings are signs that you shouldn't have initiated the breakup. Okay. So, in other words, being aware that there may be some discomfort ahead after the conversation will help you ride out those waves of discomfort when they come. Now, another thing that sometimes happens is that people who initiate the breakup expect the person they're breaking up with to do certain things. So maybe we maybe we expect that our person will understand our reasoning for wanting to end the relationship. They may not, right? Maybe we've told our person that we're going to move out and we kind of expect them to help us find a new place to live or even help us move our stuff. But they may not want us to move out. And it isn't their job to want that for us, right? Or maybe we tell someone that, we don't want to have contact with them anymore. And then after we tell them that, they keep calling us and we don't like that. Or maybe they even show up at our work or something like that. Well, here's the deal. People get to do whatever they want. We may not like it, but that doesn't change the fact that they can do these kinds of things. They can keep calling. So if you say that you don't want to have contact with someone anymore, it's your job to not answer the phone, right? If they call, you don't have to pick up. Or you can block them if you think that's appropriate or whatever. You can take whatever measures you think you need to take. But the point is, it's not your person's job to handle the breakup in any particular way. It's not their job to make the breakup easier for you. It's not their job to do anything you think they should do for that matter. By all means, if take the appropriate measures. If you need to get a restraining order, you can get a restraining order. Hopefully that will not be your situation, but take whatever measures you need to respond to their behavior, but don't expect them to respond in the way that you want them to. It's fair for you to wish that they would respond to you ending the relationship in a particular way. We all have gotten the idea that conscious uncoupling is possible and it's the best way to go. And there's nothing wrong with wanting your breakup to go well, so to speak, right? Or to be eventually friends with your person. But that may not be in the cards, and expecting your person to give you the breakup experience that you want to have may not help you find any resolution or peace. So get your own expectations in check about how they should behave after you have the conversation. Last point about, being prepared for the post-breakup phase of the relationship is that you may have a desire to slide back into comfortable territory. As I said a moment ago, after you actually have the conversation, you may be hit by a wave of feelings that come from recognizing that the relationship is actually over. Once you've told your partner that you want to leave the relationship and they've taken in the news and the wheels of change are officially set in motion, you may find that it's all unsettling and weird and scary and sad, and you may not like any of this one bit. And when that happens, it may seem really tempting to slide back into the comfortable, familiar territory of your relationship. And this can be especially enticing if your partner does not want to break up. You may be very tempted to recant everything you said and chalk it all up to being frustrated about certain and limited aspects of your relationship or stressed about work or other things in your life, and just crawl back into the comfort of the status quo and the familiar love you share with someone who is pretty great in some ways, right? And your person may welcome your return, which may feel even more comforting. This is why it's so important to be clear about your relationship decision before you attempt to execute your breakup. The going may get tough. You may be dealing with all kinds of uncomfortable emotions. And if you aren't sure that ending the relationship is the right thing for you to do, it may seem like a totally reasonable course of action to abort the mission and reverse course to fix all of those uncomfortable feelings. There's a lot more I could say about this, but I'll stick to this particular point. Is the fear of the unknown or the fear of unfamiliar discomfort a good reason to stay in a relationship? You get to decide. All right, people. If you are contemplating a breakup and you would like my help preparing for it, let's talk. It is one thing to listen to me talk about the stuff I talk about on the podcast, and it's another thing to integrate the concepts and practices I talk about into your own life circumstances. So if you would like my help doing that, I'm here for you. Breaking up can be an uncomfortable experience in many respects, but it does not have to be an epic train wreck of an event. With planning and thoughtfulness, you can make the experience one that ultimately benefits you and your partner. With the right preparation, the experience does not have to be excruciating for you. So if you'd like to begin working with me, you can head on over to my website, mariemurphyphd.com, and schedule an introductory coaching session. Okay, as always, I thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, I would be so appreciative if you would rate and review the show on iTunes. Until next time, bye for now. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.